you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this bill because it is a chance to make progress on resetting the children's social care system in England, and that's where I want to focus my remarks. Children's social care is a special endeavour. It's a collection of kin, professionals and volunteers who seek to provide safe, stable and loving homes for children right the way across our country. They are the most important foundations for any child growing up, the foundations of family, a tribe and a sense of identity. Having chaired the independent review of children's social care commissioned by the last government, I had the opportunity to spend time listening to thousands of people with direct experience of that system to make a number of recommendations that I believe the legislation put forward today deliver on. One was a shift away from late-stage crisis intervention. The other was to create a sharper focus on a more expert-led child protection system, to unlock the potential of family networks, where they can provide an answer as an alternative to the care system, and then to move the care system itself away from a system that breaks rather than builds those lifelong loving relationships. And I'd like to take this moment to also say that as somebody who has led an independent review for government, looking at a serious matter which included engaging with and speaking to those who are victims of sexual abuse and criminal abuse, I do find it extraordinary that people who are sent here to be problem solvers are using this as a moment instead to be problem exploiters. And we have got stacks of evidence. We have had thousands of victims of sexual abuse provide heartbreaking, very painful evidence and testimony over many, many years, and it is our job to listen and to act, not to exploit at moments where politics may be in our favour. I will gladly give way.
I thank my honourable friend. In my constituency of Camborne, Redruth and Hale, 32% of secondary school children are persistently absent from school. Some are also homeschooled, but some are lost to the system without support. These are vulnerable children. This bill is about protecting vulnerable children. Does my honourable friend agree that voting against this bill is playing politics with the protection of vulnerable children?
I completely agree, Madam Deputy Speaker. And actually, if members like the member for Ruislip, who I've got a huge amount of respect for in his comments that he shared on this matter a moment ago, if they were serious about this matter, would be putting forward amendments to deliver the recommendation at the ICSA, not to have another go round the process. There are three measures in particular that I want to speak about briefly. The first is how welcome it is that we've got proposals for family group decision-making to be made compulsory at pre-proceeding stage. There is very sound evidence that this works. A randomised control trial was undertaken and published a few years ago that shows that if family group decision-making in the form of a family group conference was provided at pre-proceeding stage across England, 2,000 fewer children would enter care each year, and it would free up £150 million to go into earlier support for families. It's extremely important that as local authorities start to deliver on this new requirement, that we don't just make it a tick-box exercise, but that we ensure that the evidence, the practice guidance is there to support local authorities to deliver it in a way that will be most effective. Secondly, the provisions to create multi-agency child protection teams. These teams will fuse together at an operational level, not just at a strategic level, the relevant agencies needed to share information and then act on it to protect children from significant harm. It will be important that, as well as getting the structure of this right, we also have a focus on the professional expertise that is required to do the task of child protection, which is often so challenging. We too often leave newbie social workers to that most challenging task of assessing significant harm by themselves. We don't ask the police to do that. We often send police officers out in pairs. And it's really important that we support, through the early career framework that I know ministers are looking at, a route to expertise so that the most expert are making these challenging judgments around significant harm. And then it is long overdue that we have a unique child identifier. That's something I called for in my review. It's an issue that a number of other reviewers have called for. Again, it's taken this government in its first 6 months with the leadership to act on it, and I welcome that so much. It may sound modest, and it may sound like a technical change, but if it's delivered well, it will blow away the fog of confused and partial information sharing. I would encourage ministers to look at the Think Family database in Bristol, which is a great example of what can be done when we get child-level data shared by police, education, children's services and health. And then finally, the introduction of regional cooperative arrangements that will allow for bolder action to ensure that we've got the foster carers we need in this country in particular. Last year, we had 132,000 households express an interest in becoming foster carers. We only approved 1,800 of them. I'd happily give way.
Thank you to my honourable friend for giving way. In Calderdale, where Calder Valley sits, the council took the innovative step of giving foster carers a council tax break, and that has been incredibly effective in recruiting foster carers. I wonder if ideas like that and other ideas are a good way to get more people into that system.
I completely agree. We need to do an awful lot more to support the recruitment and retention of foster carers. And actually, the reforming zeal that ministers have shown with this measure, which is to provide powers to the Secretary of State to create these regional care cooperatives around the country, I would urge ministers to use that new power, if this legislation is passed, at pace and with boldness, so that we can create the extra foster homes that we need. If you take examples of really effective fostering agencies in the voluntary sector, we could have 15,000 new foster carers approved each year, not 1,800, as is the case at the moment. So these are transformational changes. I really welcome them. I commend the government for bringing the legislation forward so early, and look forward to supporting its passage through the House.
Chris Coughlin.